Ombudsman blasts housing and transport departments. Crooked cop gets 28 months in jail.
Good evening. Two government departments have been criticised for poor planning in housing and transport. This includes having close to 2,500 empty storerooms at public housing estates that could otherwise be put to residential use. Kina Chu reports.
These empty storerooms may soon be redeveloped into residential units.
Together with the storerooms which have already been converted or under conversion, Housing Department is able to convert as many as 74 storerooms into public housing units.
According to the Office of the Ombudsman, there are currently 959 vacant storerooms in 87 public housing estates. That is nearly 40% of the 2,462 storerooms at these estates. When combined, they make up roughly 109,000 square feet. At Wacha Estate alone, the 139 empty and occupied storage rooms span some 12,572 square feet when combined. This lady who lives in the estate said the conversion should be carried out to help those in need. This resident too deems it's wasteful to leave unused storerooms idle. However, under the building's ordinance, many of the storerooms don't meet statutory requirements for residential use.
In some of the storerooms, we acknowledge that they are quite have an inferior environment. The department is now in the progress to convert as many as possible.
The Housing Department has accepted the Ombudsman's suggestion to put storerooms unsuitable for domestic use to other uses. Meanwhile, the Ombudsman also slammed the Transport Department for abruptly switching the Lantau Link's toll system from one-way to two-way last year. That has reportedly resulted in increased traffic congestion and delays. Investigations revealed that the department's insufficient planning was to blame. The Transport Department has since accepted recommendations such as instituting a contingency U-turn point for vehicles stuck in queues to leave the scene when needed. Kina Chu, TVB News.
A corrupt police superintendent has received 28 months behind bars. Ng Wei Hong was taken to the district court for sentencing this morning. He was responsible for the regional anti-triad unit, but received bribes of $570,000 from two private clubs in Wan Chai. The officer revealed confidential information to help club owners evade inspections and investigations. This happened between 2016 and 2017. A magistrate described the crime as very serious and saw no other option but to send him to jail. After a guilty plea, the 54-year-old received a 28-month jail term.
A Beijing official expressed hopes for Hong Kong media to stay objective, rational and fair in its reporting. That's on top of a friendly reminder to prevent Hong Kong from becoming a base which is anti-China. These are people in leading positions in Hong Kong's print or digital media outlets. Media executives spent 90 minutes today with the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director. Jiang Xiaoming described the exchange as frank. The official furthered advocating Hong Kong independence publicly is in nature an attempt to turn Hong Kong into a base to infiltrate and damage mainland China. So it's necessary to remind media executives of zero tolerance on Hong Kong independence. Siu Sai-wo, who leads the delegation, said the Beijing official gave his support to the SAR government's handling of Victor Mallet's visa and banning the Hong Kong National Party. But he doesn't know when pressed to clarify if Beijing's liaison office instructed or requested local media to retract reports. Those were based on his remarks on Tuesday upon meeting the Communist Party's publicity department head. He cited the propaganda chief as saying Hong Kong media must not become a base to interfere with mainland politics. Later in a statement, Siu revised the official's quote as prevent external forces from turning Hong Kong into a base for interfering with the mainland.
Overseas, after some rocky months, Pentagon officials say they sense that relations with the Chinese military may be stabilizing. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis met with his Chinese counterpart, Wei Fenghe, on the sidelines of the Asian Defense Ministers' Conference. Just weeks ago, Mattis had planned to travel to Beijing for talks with Wei. That fell through when Beijing said that Wei would not be available. It was one of several signs that trade tension in the U.S.-China relationship was spilling over into the military arena. Wei and Mattis are in Singapore this week for an Association of Southeast Asian Nations conference.
Turkish crime scene investigators continue to search the Saudi consulate and residence of the consul in connection with the death of a Saudi journalist. And as Alan Buckner reports, a pro-Turkish government newspaper published a chilling account of the journalist's alleged murder.
Forensic experts used ultraviolet lights to look for blood and DNA evidence in a site considered under international law to be sovereign Saudi territory. A harsh critic of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he fled the country amid the prince's rise. An anonymous high-level Turkish official has said investigators found certain evidence of Khashoggi's slaying. A pro-Turkish government newspaper alleged Saudi officials cut off Khashoggi's fingers and decapitated him inside the consulate while his fiancée waited outside. Hours after that article came out, the Washington Post published a column it said it received after Khashoggi's disappearance. In it, he pointed to muted international response to ongoing abuses against journalists by governments in the Middle East. A longtime friend and professional colleague says he's sure Khashoggi was murdered and has little doubt the Saudi Crown Prince knew about the operation.
The governing process is a very vertical one. It always goes up to the top.
Jashan was also critical of the response so far from the U.S.
He is a permanent resident in this country, yes, not a citizen, but he's entitled to the same rights as a U.S. citizen.
But U.S. President Donald Trump remains non-committal.
Well, he wasn't a citizen of this country, for one thing, but if you look at Saudi Arabia, they're an ally and they're a tremendous purchaser of not only military equipment, but other things.
But there's a growing bipartisan movement in Congress for a critical response against Saudi Arabia.
We need to condemn the conduct in the strongest possible terms, and the President and Congress need to do it together.
Because this President has been unwilling to call out authoritarian leaders, I mean, this has been a pattern. If the President's not willing to fulfill his responsibility, Congress will act.
Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Residents in Crimea are mourning the loss of 19 students who were killed when a teenage gunman went on a shooting rampage at a vocational school before turning the gun on himself. More than 50 others were wounded. Officials said the fourth-year student killed himself in the library of the Kerch Polytechnic College after the attack. His mother, a nurse, was treating victims at a local hospital, unaware yet that her son was the culprit and was already dead. Authorities are still trying to determine a motive.
And still to come. Details about who will get the new ID cards. Government to push ahead with funding for controversial East Lantau reclamation. And British Prime Minister Theresa May proposes a longer transition for Brexit.
Hello， 你好啊，我係Nano嘅氣味全心師嚟㗎。一聞就知道你頭先一定係食咗咖喱魚柳，今朝飲咗杯啦，一陣間仲有個會要開。
聞一聞就知咁多嘢。
Hello， 你哋好啊，我係Nano嘅氣味全心師啊。等我聞下先，我聞到你哋 lunch 咧食完燒肉嚟喎。點解咁都知嘅？我仲聞到你哋啱啱一定係飲完珍珠奶茶，而家係咪諗住繼續去行街咧？係啊。你好啊，我係Nano嘅氣味全心師嚟㗎。我一聞就知道你一定係食咗麻辣 火鍋啦！你今朝同個狗仔玩同散步。係啊，不過你件衫有咁多味，你怕唔怕？你一陣間同你朋友飲嘢嘅時候，真係咁大陣味咩？唔想煙咪氣味話俾人知你係美食家，下次洗衫用洗衣液加埋靚咯，唔怕氣味咁就中意食乜都得啦。
Welcome back to TVB News. The city's new smart identity cards start rolling out in late December. Authorities announced today that those born in 1985 and 86 will be among the first to get the new IDs. Christy Lung with details.
When will be your turn to get the new smart identity card? The replacement program will begin on December 27th for government officials, including the chief executive, principal officials, police and immigration officers. That's to allow them to get familiar with the new card. The replacement for residents starts from January 21st. Around 300,000 holders born between 1985 and 1986 will be the first batch to get the new ID cards.
The first one is that how long has the current identity card been issued to the holders? The second one is the frequency of the holders crossing the control point. And also the population distribution is also one of our consideration factors.
Appointments to get the new card can be made online, by phone or through a mobile app. Residents are allowed to make unlimited changes to their appointment date. 9 replacement centers have been set up across the city, serving a total of 7,000 applications every day. 14 self-service kiosks are set up at each center. Applicants only have to verify their fingerprints at the kiosk and move on to photo taking for the new card. The whole process should take around half an hour. Residents are also allowed to bring along 2 family members aged 65 or above for the procedures. The new card features a larger photo in high resolution. To look your best in it, applicants are reminded to wear darker clothes with collars and to avoid heavy makeup. Crystalline, TVB News.
Despite growing concerns about the cost and its environmental impact, authorities are still pushing ahead with their Lantau Tomorrow vision. The goal now is to approach the legislature for funding in the first half of next year. But how much is enough?
Lantau Tomorrow Vision, a highlight of this year's policy address. This project seeks to build artificial islands east of Lantau that will boost the city's land by 1,700 hectares. The government wants to first focus on developing 1,000 hectares near Khao Yai Chau.
And we're talking about 1,000 hectares, which corresponds to what the Task Force on Land Supply has been engaging the public about.
But that task force has yet to make its final recommendations to the government, as a public consultation ended just late last month. Its report will come at year's end. Then this.
When we go to LegCo for funding, for the planning and engineering study, which will mainly focus on the 1,000 hectare reclamation of the Khao Yai Chau project. So that will happen, I think, in a few months' time.
As for costs, the official only gave an estimate of $130 to $150 billion, but that's just for reclamation works at Khao Yai Chau. Infrastructure is not included. Still, the development chief said that sum is comparable to land resumption in the new territories, where they also face pressures over traffic and ecological concerns. And what about minimizing the impact on marine life around Lantau Island?
It's up to the proponents to collect the data, to make up the proposals, and how they can have the desire to minimize the environmental impacts.
He also stressed development will follow the latest standards to withstand future environmental challenges from climate change.
Starting next month, there will be no high-speed trains between Hong Kong and Shanghai. This comes less than a month after the high-profile commencement of the service. A notice at West Kowloon Station indicated no trains between Hong Kong and Shanghai Hongqiao from November 11th until further notice. It's due to railway construction work, which is affecting both the G99 and G100 trains. They are the only pair of trains that directly connect the two cities. Official figures released so far show the daily patronage at West Kowloon has yet to meet the government's estimate of just above 80,000.
If you're itching for a pay rise, you may find better luck on the mainland. A recent survey is projecting mainland firms will offer a more than 5% pay increase next year. It's what the Baptist University and Hong Kong People Management Association concluded. They interviewed around 120 Hong Kong and mainland firms between July and September. On average, local companies plan to increase workers' wages by 3.8% and those across the border 5.2 to 5.5%.
China has characterized its mass detention of Muslims in Xinjiang as a push to bring destitute people who are easily led astray into the modern civilized world. This film is the latest government effort to defend its extrajudicial internment of Central Asian minorities. About 1 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other minorities have been arbitrarily detained in mass internment in the Xinjiang region. Critics are slamming Beijing for forcing Xinjiang's Muslims into education centers to try to bring them in line with Communist Party thinking.
Instead, what you get are these ludicrous propaganda statements that simply say, everything's fine, we're just teaching people job skills, they're all perfectly happy to be here. We documented torture, we documented ill treatment. Several of our interviewees told us they were so despondent at how they were being treated and that they had no way of knowing how long they would be there, that they had contemplated suicide.
British Prime Minister Theresa May says her country's messy divorce from the European Union could be extended by a matter of months. This comes after a summit of EU leaders failed to make any progress towards a tangible agreement. Jeff Tang reports.
Leaders of European Union member states had hoped to secure a draft Brexit agreement in Brussels as Britain's official divorce from the bloc draws closer. Currently, Britain is scheduled to leave the EU at the end of March next year, with the transition out of the bloc expected to be complete at the end of 2020. But yet again they left empty-handed as British Prime Minister Theresa May offered no new ideas on how to break the impasse over the Irish border issue. There are even signs that May is now looking at extending the transition period by a matter of months as both sides struggle to agree on an Irish border backstop. The suggestion will surely ruffle the feathers of Brexit campaigners who are unlikely to accept the idea of the country being tied to EU rules for longer. But May protests that this would only be used as a last resort.
This is not expected to be used because we are working to ensure that we have that future relationship in place.
May's comments came a day after EU leaders implored her to come up with fresh ideas to resolve the Irish border issue. While both sides agree they must keep the land border between the UK's Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland an EU member state friction-free after Brexit, each has rejected the other's solution. However, Ireland's Prime Minister is open to May's suggestion.
I think we have to listen to any proposal like that. I've always thought it would be very hard to negotiate a new treaty between the EU and the UK, setting out our new relationship in less than 2 years and also get it ratified by 27 parliaments. But that certainly cannot be a substitute for a protocol on Ireland, the backstop, which assures us that no matter what happens, there won't be a hard border on our island.
But even if May manages to reach an agreement with the EU, she still has to get it past her Conservative Party, which is torn between hard and soft Brexit factions. Then she has to deal with her party's parliamentary allies, Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, who insists a solution can't include custom checks between Northern Ireland and the rest of Britain. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
And that's the news.